Hello, this is Doth Nihilus, and welcome to the Abyss. Um, Tonight, live from the Abyss, has a special guest. We are going to have Audra Milos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, on our show. We're going to be talking about the recent overturning of Roe v. Wade and what a world post Roe will look like and what we can do to affect change to rectify the current issues, whether it means codifying Roe or any number of other issues. With that, I'm going to invite our guest on and get the show on the road. So I know this is a change of pace for people who are usually see my content as being solely occult, but I believe that aside from occultism, politics is another interesting topic that I'm interested about. So I wanted to share that aspect of myself with everyone, and I hope that you enjoy the content and stuff. Hello, Joshua. I hope you all enjoy the content, and my guest hopefully is going to be coming on. I'm able to join. So, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the things that the thing we're encountering is a lot of several states had trigger laws in effect, which immediately, once Roe was overturned, caused. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like the statue. The With the overturning of Roe, these states bans immediately went into effect, and you're also seeing a lot of different bills within states, like a 6-week abortion ban in a few states. I think Ohio is one of them. Indiana has a potential abortion ban in the works. I don't know if that's changed or not. Recently, a 10-year-old girl who was raped, unfortunately, in Ohio, was denied an abortion because she was 3 days past the 6-week limitation, and so she had to go to Indiana to get said abortion. A Ohio, I believe it was an Ohio representative, said that the 10-year-old girl should have looked at her pregnancy as being an opportunity, which my initial response would have been, "Hello, Audra. You're your audio.
All right, sorry, it took me a minute to get on.
Hello, welcome to the Abyss. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an actress and model. I live in Hollywood. I'm also a quiet activist. Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay. Um, to start off, what was your initial thoughts with the Dobbs decision?
I just can't believe that it made its way. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe that we're already here, and it doesn't seem like a lot of people approve. And I guess that's kind of how I'm feeling, like shocked.
Right. And I mean, we sort of knew this was coming with the Alito the leaked draft decision. You know, we kind of knew it was coming, but with the backlash that we saw in response to that draft decision, my personal thought is I thought that maybe the justices would realize um, the impact of their decision, and that they might backtrack. But apparently, they're very hung up on their uh, decision. And
Funny, I thought that too. I thought that they would backtrack. And when they didn't, I was sort of like, wow, they really stuck like their heels into it. Like these sociopaths are really like, yeah.
what's even more hilarious to me, honestly, is how they could say that there was no historical uh, um, precedent for the right to an abortion, which, considering our history as an just one example, there was a book of remedies that Benjamin Franklin published, and one of the remedies in there was actually methods on how to get an abortion.
Yeah, abortions and how to get them and like how to track your pregnancy. All of those things have been around since, mankind and women and humans have known what menstrual blood is and what it means to control what that means. So when people say things like abortions, were invented to kill Black community members, that makes no sense at all. When people say that abortion is for like feminists in the 70s who burned their bra, it's weird. Humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and we've always had, pregnancy control. And you know what I mean? Like women have always done that. So for people to claim that this is like some new age feminazi thing it's total bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been a historical precedent to access to abortion, and the only thing that this court's decision really does, in my opinion, is it makes safe abortions impossible, and it puts a woman's health at risk.
Yeah, and I mean doctors already I don't know if a lot of people know this, but doctors already don't do like risky surgeries on people because of their, doctor reputation. They've got like these statistics and these quotas and things like that, and if they take on too many risky surgeries and too many patients die on their table or don't get the surgery that they, the results that they wanted, they can get sued or lose their job. So a lot of times they won't take on risky surgeries, and that's what's going to start happening with these abortions. Is these women and girls are going to come to them and be like, "Hey, I need this abortion." They're like, "I'm sorry, it's too risky. Like, I don't want to lose my job." Like, it is such a simple procedure. You literally just go in and pick the cell off the wall of the uterus. That's all you do. But people aren't going to want to do that simple surgery because of the bullshit risk.
Right.
And it
And
is a simple surgery.
yeah. And the other thing is, like, for example, like states like Texas, where they allow for family members, including family members of the rapists,
Yeah.
for example, to pursue litigation against the anyone who gets an abortion outside of the state of Texas, which is interesting because you see a lot of states put in place limitations and basic prohibit the ability of these family members from facing any kind of litigation in their states and stuff. So it creates a constitutional crisis.
It does, although I will say this, for all of that the state of Virginia is, there are laws about like suing people and slap suits and civil suits and things like that. They're pretty decent. I mean, they're like not decent in a sense that I'm glad that we have them because they're really fucking annoying. You can like pretty much in the state of, in every other state except for Virginia, can't sue someone for just about anything, but in Virginia you can. You know, but you're saying that Texas has laws that prevent them from being able to take the litigation there?
No, I'm saying that Texas has laws where they can pursue litigation of a
Ah,
person who goes outside of the state to get an abortion, and that
I see.
there are states, I think, like I want to say like New Hampshire or Massachusetts, that have laws on the books that actually bar people from pursuing litigation for people who get an abortion in their state.
Yeah,
Put like a wall
Massachusetts.
up.
Yeah. There's a few states that are trying to block uh, the legal side of it. So that, like, if somebody comes to like, California to get an abortion, you can't like sue them, you can't like track them because basically they're our jurisdiction at that point. I mean, um, yeah, like they're trying to make it so that basically like women in Texas can't move to another state, they can't uh what is it? They can't travel to another state. They can't go to another country on vacation. They're like trying to put all these weird laws in that, like, basically they're not coming right out and saying it, but the people of Texas, like the higher ups, are kind of like doing the whole like you have to stay in Texas, and a lot of people in Texas are saying, Texas isn't a red state; it's a blue state that's being like held captive. So the women there, they're not like, glad to be there, so to speak. They're trying to escape, and the higher ups are like essentially trying to like keep them there. And they don't trust these women because obviously they like, they're like, oh, they don't want to be pregnant. They're going to try to escape. So like they're trying to make it so that like the women of Texas have to like stay in Texas and that they're not allowed to go to any other states because, like you said, other states are doing like the whole, protections thing.
Yeah,
So instead of just letting these women leave Texas, they're just like straight up like holding them captive.
yeah. And on top of the litigation aspect of Texas, you also have basically bounty hunters that are tracking women in other states who go to said other states to get an abortion. So you have both the litigation and the bounty hunters, which I think is just kind of
Yeah.
uh,
Like your neighbors who like were pissed because you didn't bring your own casserole to their like bake off or whatever last summer, like they'll probably tattletale on you for like going to Europe or something. Be like, I think she had an abortion. It's just dumb.
yeah, it's
And it is going to lead to a lot of tattletaling and people like, I think the thing that creeps me out the most though is the period tracking apps, like the government hacking into your period tracking apps and being like, she missed a period on this day, like she must have gotten an abortion or something like that. Like it just, yeah, it's crazy. It's creepy as fuck.
yeah, there's that, and then there's the ability of states to subpoena said app creators in order to get that information from their services.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, a
ridiculous.
lot of Uber drivers in Texas, like, um, there's the whole thing a few months ago. They were saying that like Uber drivers can get in trouble for driving people to an abortion, and it's like nobody tells their, Uber driver that. Like, uh, basically, if you even help someone get an abortion, whether you realize it or not, you can. get in trouble. It's very I don't know, it feels very I would say it's dystopian, but that's kind of a white woman thing to say because a lot of people of color and in other countries are dealing with this and have been for decades as a result of American politics. It just hits here home right now. So
I mean, the only thing that when it comes to POC people, um, what this does is basically widen the inequality in this country, um,
yeah,
even more so than it already was. And I mean, and like you said, the history of reproductive rights for POC people in this country haven't exactly been stellar, even when the right to an abortion was protected by the Supreme Court, because you had instances where black women and people of color in general face sterilization
yeah,
in their states and stuff like that. So, I mean, there are women alive today that's, still, have are are victims of that.
that's a great point that you made that these women are still alive today. Like, I mean, we try to act like this is like something that happened like so long ago in history, but it's not so long ago, and it is happening again. So it's worth talking about.
Right.
And a lot of these abortion bans are going to affect people in the Black community because, like I've been posting about, and something I really want to touch on is that these rich white women, these mistresses of rich men, these mistresses of doctors, they're always going to have access to safe, reliable care, abortion, everything. They're going to always be able to um, run from their little quote unquote mistakes. Not that having kids is a mistake, but you know what I mean. They're never going to be able to. They live such a life that these laws don't touch them. These laws are going to affect Black women who live in shitty neighborhoods. They're going to affect little girls whose uncles raped them. It's going to affect the marginalized the most. It's not going to affect these rich white women who don't have to interact with the general public from day to day. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the most the most severely impacted by this are going to be POC and marginalized communities. I mean, poor white people are going to be affected by this, but POC people are going to be even more affected by this. I would even say 20, 30, 100 times more than
Yeah.
poor whites. So, I mean, yes, there is definitely a truth to that. And rich people have always had ways to circumvent any kind of legal barriers,
Yeah.
whether it was the war on drugs or prohibition or any kind of discrimination. Even like for example, during the war on drugs, the Nixon administration specifically targeted black communities, and also the the hippie movement and the
Yeah.
protesting, the anti-war movement, with those drug policies specifically. And a member, I think it was his chief of staff or something to that effect, actually came out and pretty much spelled it out in plain English that this is the reason we're pursuing this, even though we know that the facts are contrary to the policy.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with abortion. The facts are contrary to the policy.
Yeah. And they've at this point they've straight up said, like, we recognize that, like, a clump of fertilized cells is not a soul. Like, we recognize that. We just don't care. Like, at this point, it's the force of the January 6th, 2020 insurrection. Kind of, it never went away. Like, a lot of those people who never really got caught are still like they have power and they're using it. Like, they're just so the Brent Kavanaugh, that piece of shit, like, I'm not surprised that he and that Clarence dude are like supporting the whole abortion ban, and they're like forcing it in, even though none of their coworkers and colleagues want this. Is it's further force. It's further Republican conservative trying to force their way and refusing to die out, sort of like.
It's a birth pang, basically. It's their last
Yeah.
grasp of air. And what's interesting is that in his addendum to the Dobbs decision, Brett Kavanaugh came out and said that there there is shouldn't be any reason to limit a person's travel to get an abortion. There is no legal precedent for that, but because his decision doesn't carry any legal weight, it doesn't prevent any states from imposing travel restrictions on women, regardless if they're pregnant or not.
Yeah.
Because, how can you prove that you're pregnant at 6 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah. Without being intrusive to someone.
Right. Because let me ask you, do you know at like at what point during a woman's pregnancy that they like visibly show that they're pregnant?
Honestly, it's usually like 3 to 6 months, but it's some women like Victoria's Secret models hit the genetic jackpot and they don't start showing till they're like 6 months. But it is hard to conceal a pregnancy, especially and I'm not in any way saying that skinny people have marginalization because of their bodies, but if you're skinny, it's going to show. And if it's if you're bigger and you've got like hoodies and stuff like that, maybe you can hide it and travel. But yeah, the privilege of being able to hide your pregnancy is also a privilege. So yeah,
Raven Phoenix 93 says 5 to 6 in most cases.
5 to 6 months
Mon-
for showing.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's what they mean.
Um, yeah, I guess for some people, yeah. Like I said, Victoria's Secret models and people who like hit the genetic jackpot, it's usually like, 6 months, but my mother started showing it like 3 or 4 months. So yeah, whatever.
um, and then of course, with this also comes the new precedent that's being set by the Supreme Court, where the overturning of Roe affects the right to privacy in regards to so many other rights that we have that either and this is an opinion I saw where either the Supreme Court does not believe their own verdict, or the other rights that aren't set, that have no precedence in the Constitution leading up to the mid 19th century. We're talking like 1868 or 69, which back then even same-sex relationships were considered illegal. So I mean, Clarence Thomas's marriage is on the chopping block too, in a way.
And that's the thing is the overturning of Roe versus Wade and all of these like bigoted laws that are being put in place and stuff, it affects the bigots that are putting them in place. Like it's just so weird that they're willing to like cut their nose off to spite their face, or that they're like willing to, I don't know, like it's kind of like when I read that like 53% of white women voted for Trump, I was like embarrassed to be a white woman. And I was like, wow, you're really willing to give up your womanhood in exchange for your whiteness. And that's kind of how I feel about these Supreme Court leaders and these elitists and these higher ups is, these laws and these bigoted notions, these immoral ethics and shit like that that you guys hold, they negatively impact you as well. Like, I don't know, it's just baffling that some people are just so willing to hurt themselves if it means hurting another person. And it's like, or maybe none of us can be hurt. Maybe you could just like not be a shitty person. But yeah, his marriage is on the chopping block as well. I read that, and whatever. Maybe he doesn't give a shit. I don't know.
Well, I mean, and that's he said that, and both him and Alito said that their decision only is a focus for abortion rights, which I find very convenient considering that the precedent that Roe set a, was based on the right to privacy.
Yeah. Privacy for like anything basically in intimate, personal relationships and like bodily autonomy and stuff. Like I said, Roe versus Wade is more about a privacy thing and a freedom thing than it is about a specifically abortion thing. I think a lot of people don't understand that, but
And then the other thing, the one thing that I find interesting now, and that a couple states are trying to do this, is they want to put laws in place that provide personhood for a fetus.
but you can't claim a fetus on taxes because it's not a person.
Exactly. But they wanted to do this in order so they can take it to the Supreme Court, because in Leto's opinion of the decision, he basically said that that the nature of personhood of a fetus is kind of up in the air, and so that's why these red states are trying to make these laws so that they can eventually take it, boom, 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 to the Supreme Court, so that way a fetus's personhood is now given definition by the court.
Well, if that's the case, then they need to start paying these women for being pregnant against their will, and they need to start compensating even the women who, are pregnant and happy that they're pregnant. They need to start, giving us our due then, if that's the case. If a fetus is a person, then give us the money to support a person. I mean, even if you're pregnant and, your, kid, quote unquote, your pregnant thing inside you, whether it's a person or not, like it still needs, if you are going to carry the pregnancy to term, it does need to be taken care of. Prenatal vitamins aren't cheap. Doctor's visits are not cheap. And you can't claim a fetus on taxes. So how are these women getting the money to support themselves as they are a person and this other person or this other thing that the Supreme Court is claiming as a person? You know what I mean? If it's not a person, obviously you don't have to pay me. If it's a person and you're forcing me to carry it, you owe me money, basically.
Right. And where's the child support? Um,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the interesting thing is that I remember watching an interview of this one pro-lifer which I don't even consider them pro-life at this point. There's two titles I'd give them, and this I watched this on a TikTok video, and I absolutely agree with this. They're either forced birth extremists or
Yep.
rapist rights advocates.
That's essentially what it is. And they're trying to like make it illegal to basically say no to getting pregnant too. Like that's what's coming next, I think, is uh you're not if a man says, "Hey, I want to impregnate you," you're like not allowed to say no. Like that's basically where we're headed at this point. People keep saying like we're going backwards in politics. I don't know about that. I think we're going to a terrible worse place. I really do.
Yeah, I'm sort of the same opinion. And like recently, and I was talking about this briefly before you came on the show. But this 10-year-old from
Yeah.
Ohio got raped, and they found out 3 days after the 6-week limit on providing abortion services. So she had to go out of state to Indiana to get abortion services, which that state apparently is working on an abortion ban of their own.
Yes.
So it's just going to make traveling out of state to places is even much more harder because you'd have to go, like, depending on where you live, you're talking about, a few hundred miles, or, 500 miles, and it just, it's like, I think one day after the decision came out, a nurse wrote a story about this woman who came in with an ectopic pregnancy,
Yes.
and the nurse said that the doctor was with a lawyer for 9 hours because he was
Yeah.
trying to find a loophole around the law so that he could save this woman's life. And her ectopic pregnancy burst, and she lost like 800, 900 cc's of blood and almost died. And
Yeah.
that's really the future that we're headed for. Women are going to die of completely preventable circumstances because of these right-wing extremists.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier with the doctors and the lawyers and stuff. Doctors already don't want to perform risky surgeries because of legality and shit, and because of they don't want their statistics to go down and things like that. But like now with these abortion bans, it's just going to get worse. Like it's and I'm sorry, but that doctor, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. Like you do have to, protect yourself without depleting resources and depleting yourself of happiness in life and stuff. But you also have an obligation to like help other human beings if you can. And he could, and he just like wouldn't for himself. And that feels like it goes against the Hippocratic Oath. And I feel like,
Yeah, I was gonna go there.
yeah, like I feel like he should have like if it's just weird if at my place of work, if I worked at like a office and I was worried about getting in trouble for something, um I wouldn't spend nine if I spent 9 hours at my place of employment on the phone with a lawyer telling them like I'm afraid to do this thing at work because I might get legally in trouble. I would get in trouble at work for being on the phone with a lawyer for 9 fucking hours. Like the whole situation is just so unprofessional. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Raven Phoenix 93 says, I fear we are heading in the direction of miscarriage be, bringing murder charges if the fetus is given personhood.
Yeah, that is where we're heading. That's actually not where we're heading. That's where we are currently. Basically, if you have a miscarriage, because miscarriages, you can't really prove if it's intentional or unintentional, which like you can kind of prove it sometimes, but not really. Basically, there's no way to say like whether or not a woman, uh, had control over her own body or not. And that's essentially what it is. If she didn't have control over her own body, and she had a miscarriage, like, yeah, it's frustrating for the higher ups, but like, whatever. But if she did it on purpose and she does have control over her body and she, can give herself a miscarriage anytime she wants to without asking for permission from anyone, then the higher ups are like, fuck that. Yeah. So, because there's not really a way to tell, they just any miscarriage at all is considered a murder on something that isn't even a person on taxes. Like, so who am I murdering? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I wonder what those conversations are like. Like, who specifically did I murder? What is their social security number? What, like they just, the thing that got the miscarriage, it's not a person. Like, it just, at the end of the day, like you could ask those questions and be like, so, who specifically did I murder? At the end of the day, the higher ups are just going to be like, it doesn't matter. You got rid of a pregnancy. That's what matters. And that's really just at the end of the day what it boils down to. It's control. It's the fact that women have control over their own bodies and they don't want that. So,
Right. And it's bordering, when you were talking about that, it kind of made it sound like this whole situation is like bordering on absurdity, like an episode of The
yeah.
Twilight Zone. And
It is.
it does sound like that, and it is like that, you know. And there's very little there's some recourse that we have um, as a country, individual states, and I honestly do not. I find the whole argument of states' rights anymore to just be a way, a justification to shit on people.
Yeah, it is. Um, and it's a way for them to kind of be like, we don't have to listen to the people who run America. Like if, the higher ups are, if there's Democrats and leftists in charge, and the majority of people in a certain state, aren't that, they feel like they don't have to listen to the rest of us. And it's like, yes, you fucking do. Like, those are the rules now. We all collectively decided. If you have 10 people in a room who decide that pissing in the corner of the room is wrong, that one person who wants to piss in the corner doesn't get to go piss in the corner just because they want to. You know what I mean? And that's literally the mentality that these fucking Republicans and conservatives have is, if 10 people think that something is right and don't mind something, but one person, is offended and butthurt and doesn't like it, then they don't have to like fall in line or something. And it's like, no, we all collectively agreed that like rape and murder and child molestation is like wrong. Like we all collectively agree that. We all collectively agree that like world hunger and, all these issues are wrong. So why the fuck are Republicans and conservatives like super bathing in this shit?
And that's the interesting thing is that a lot of the anymore the Republicans, the right wing specifically, they're no longer really hiding their agenda anymore. They're very, very much telegraphing their moves before they do them.
Yeah.
And this one, I forget what her name is or what her specific profession is. I know that she's a congressperson, but I don't know if it's like for national or for a specific state. But she came out during a Trump rally and said that thank the Supreme Court or something like that for protecting white life.
Yes, I did see that video. She did say that. And she was standing right next to Donald Trump when she said it, and like they're not hiding their agenda. Like Trump straight up said, black teenage girls are the right kind of black people. He said that Mexicans are rapists and murderers. He said that, he's got friends who have, stood next to him and said, that they support white supremacy. And, then this woman comes out standing next to him at his rally and says, like, thank the Supreme Court for protecting white life specifically. And, you've got even in Ukraine that the prime minister dude who like came out and said something along the lines of like, usually when we're at war, we're fighting, the enemy is clear, but in Ukraine, the enemy looks like us. So it's harder to fight them or something like that. And then, yeah, like it's so fucking like clear that people who like don't like women and people of color and gay people, like, because language nowadays is so like, hey, you have to, speak with respect towards these people. These people like don't know how to do that, so they're accidentally coming right out and saying really bigoted, ignorant, mean things, and they're like, and it's like a little bit funny to watch, but it's also like on one hand, I'm like, just come right out and say what you want to say. Like, call me a faggot. Like, come right out and say it. And then they say it, and I'm like, see, you are, a bigot. And they're like, like you caught me. And it's like, no, you caught yourself. I can't bait you into being a bigot.
Right. And that's the thing is that they make it sound like a Freudian slip, but it's really not.
It's not. And the thing is like, I saw a woman on TikTok say something like, when people apologize for like saying the N word or for saying something, offensive against gay people or black people or women or something, and they apologize and they're like, that's not my character. It's like, but it is though, because like, people who legitimately don't bathe in that kind of behavior, they don't have those slips. So if you're having those little slips, it's in your vocabulary. You use those words or you think about them enough that it can become an accidental slip. And they like tell on themselves, I guess is like what I'm trying to say. Like they rat themselves out.
Yeah, and that's and I find that's a big problem with people who take an apolitical stance
Mm.
on stuff and say, "Well, I'm not political." And I it just, you know, their silence to me speaks louder than anything when it comes to um, issues of oppression and marginalization and stuff like that. And especially with Roe, you see a lot of um, a lot of white women come out and say, "Well, I'm not political," you know, or I don't have an opinion on this. And
Which
I
is
just
weird because it
find that
affects them.
exactly, you know, because you mentioned that earlier about, you know, how the most people who are going to be affected by this are people of color, you know. So the the white woman who's well off, she doesn't have to necessarily worry about that. She can find financial ways to circumvent, you know, these limitations, like you were saying.
But also, though, and not to say, white people have problems too, because it's not even close to the same thing. But there's a lot. The middle class gap is almost closed now. Like there's almost no middle class anymore. So if you are white and a woman, and if you're a white gay woman, or in a red state or something like that, if you're you still are affected by the bigotry of the patriarchy and things like that. It's so the 53% of white women who voted for Trump, not all of them were rich. In fact, most of them were probably poor and stupid. And they need to start thinking about that. Like when your crusty teenage daughter gets pregnant from Cletus next door, and you and Dale were saving up enough money so she could go to fucking community college. Like, think about that. Like, wouldn't an abortion come in handy so that maybe, your crusty daughter can get the fuck out of the trailer park? Like, I don't know. It's
Republican women will be like, you should look at this as an opportunity.
it's basically what they told that 10-year-old girl, and she was like, nah, fuck that noise, son, and like left. So
Yeah, I find it that when a woman, the last thing you should say to a little girl who has been violated like that is that you should look at it as an opportunity.
right, yeah, exactly. That is the very last thing that anybody wants to hear after being violated in any way.
But and now, you know, now that we've kind of come full circle, I want to kind of talk to you about where we can go from here. What are our options to fix this situation? And of course, the first one that comes to my mind is codifying Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. Um, well, circling back to what you had said before we started joking around a little bit, something about accessibility. I can't really remember. Oh yeah, the privilege of not being political. Basically, if you have the privilege of like not being political, use that privilege for the people who do need to be political. Then, if you're in a position where you're like, oh, I live in like California and I'm rich and I'm on birth control and none of this affects me. Okay, start helping the people that it does affect then. You can send people abortion pills if they need them through the mail. You can take them on, quote unquote, camping trips and, take your friend to get an abortion in a state that you can. Or if you even know a doctor who, is worked at an abortion clinic and he's willing to, provide a safe environment in emergency situations. I will say this, there's a lot of people online who are going to pretend to want to help you, and they're going to be like, oh yeah, come to my house if you're pregnant, I'll help you out. And then they'll tattletale on you. So really vet your sources and like, don't trust strangers on the internet. Only people unfortunately, which sucks because not, you might be saying, well, I don't know anyone who can help me. That is still not really a good idea to go to people you don't know who might be able to help you. Like, just really, if you do something like that, really vet your sources and like, make sure that they're authentic and legit and that these people aren't going to like kidnap you or hurt you or, tattletale on you, or even people who mean well, who, might claim that they're a doctor and they might just, not know how to give an abortion, and they might, claim that they know how to give one. And, just make sure that you are helping people in the right ways and that you're not like sending people down a worse path kind of a thing.
Right. And like you mentioned with sending abortion pills in the mail, there is the potential that the Supreme Court could limit the ability of the FDA and as a way to prevent the spreading of abortion pills via U.S. mail, and find ways to block that in from going forward. So there is that potential threat looming somewhere on the horizon.
Yeah, there's also talks about labeling herbs that can cause abortions in the supermarket. Hibiscus is one of them. There's a whole list of, because like I said, abortions have been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, and pregnancy prevention also has. So women who, got pregnant and it wasn't a good time, it wasn't a safe time for them to be able to have children, or maybe so they got raped and they, knew the baby belonged to someone who, or the fetus belonged to someone who, they just didn't want in their life, da da da. Abortions have been going on for hundreds of thousands of years. So, these methods to have them will always be around and stuff too. So like you can tell women you can't have this medical pill that was created in a lab, but like there's hibiscus like everywhere in tropical areas, and you don't even have to have it in tropical areas, and it can cause uterine contractions, which it basically causes the uterus to shake off the fetus and to, abort it or to miscarry it. So like they're talking about limiting the sale of these flowers, these herbs, these you know what I mean? Like they're talking about like any method. Like it's just one of those things where it's eventually going to get to the point where they're going to have to like, handmaid's tale these women and keep them in like a warehouse somewhere, because you don't need pills or herbs even to have a miscarriage. If you're far enough along, you can fall down the stairs. Like, you know what I mean? It's eventually going to get to the point where women, you can't force someone to do something that they do not want to do. Even women who are strapped to a table and are going to be forced to be pregnant, that way are still going to find a way to not be pregnant. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we're not going to just sit there and take it. It's, there's a lot of women who would rather, in situations where they can't have an abortion or they can't have a miscarriage or like whatever, they're just going to kill themselves. Like women are not just going to, the Supreme Court seems to have this fantasy where they think that women are just going to be like, oh, I don't have access to this one pill, I guess I'll have to raise this kid now. That's not going to happen. That's not how it works. We're either going to kill off the fetus, not even kill because it's not alive. We're either going to, get rid of the fetus, or we're going to kill ourselves. There's no gray area where we're going to raise this fucking kid. You live in a fantasy world. Yeah. So even if abortion pills are not accessible, what you can do is I have a whole list that I've been posting. It's in my stories. It's also in my highlights and on my Instagram for different herbs or methods and things like that are not medical pills and procedures, because not everyone has access to those things. But a lot of people do have access to nature. And nature wants you to have control over your body. So
Now, do the herbs that you have mentioned on your Instagram, do they have doses?
doses, warnings. They also have how you use them, because some of them you eat, some of them you rub on your abdomen, some of them you inhale. Like it's the list on my Instagram. It doesn't just have the list of herbs because that's dangerous because that'll just lead to people like eating handfuls of hibiscus. But like yeah, the list on my Instagram does have like how to guides and things like that. And I'm also not the only person who has these. A lot of these feminist Instagram pages haven't gotten taken down yet, which is another thing. Instagram and Facebook and all of the billionaires that own social media are trying to like ban uh, people helping and sharing these resources on social media. So if my posts do get taken down, I will just post videos telling people there's a herb that rhymes with um, Trubiscus, and it can do that. You know what I mean? Like people are always going to find loopholes and ways around trying to. Uh, People are always going to find ways around forced pregnancy. You know what I mean? You're not going to force us to do anything we don't want to do. We're always going to find loopholes and ways. I will literally, you know, I'll speak in codes if I have to and get all my social media banned. I don't give a shit. I'm still going to try to put the word out. You know, if I can help at least one person, I think that would be really beneficial. But you
Yeah.
should seek actual medical attention first. Don't do the whole like white woman witch of the woods thing and be like, I'm going to go eat a handful of hibiscus and run into the woods and I'm never going to, have to deal with the Supreme Court again. Obviously, that's not how it works.
Right.
If you have access to abortion pills, if you can get them, things like that, use those first and use them properly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I love I love your conviction, your passion for this, definitely, that you're willing to put yourself out there and put yourself at risk of being knocked, banned by the metaverse lord, Mark Zuckerberg.
Ugh.
Um,
Funny that he like went from Facebook to Meta. It's like, dude, we know it's you. You ain't fooling nobody.
Um, and what I find incredibly frustrating is the fact that the Democratic Party has had decades to codify this, and they're not doing it. And now, after the verdict, you have the Biden campaign coming out and asking women to donate $15 to his campaign, and I'm just like,
The nerve. Like, I'm in charge and I can't protect you. Give me money. Like, what is, like, I don't understand how people's brains work. Like, I don't understand how you can be like, I know I could help you and I know that I could stop these people from hurting you, but I'm not going to because I don't want to piss them off. Also give me money. Like, I don't understand the mentality behind some people. Like, the nerve.
right.
So.
And I think what really needs to happen is we have one last recourse, really, when it comes to this issue, is that we need to get people who are pro-choice into political positions of political power.
And the thing is, we've
Whether
been
it's, well,
trying, but like the Republicans and conservatives for the past like 30 years have been like, just like you said, like it's the last, kind of thing before they die out. Like it's the last, like holding on, like scraping their claws down the walls as they get dragged out of the bar, kind of a thing. Like
yeah,
it's
they're right now they're like a shade of blue and they're turning purple.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're flipping out so much. Is they know that they're, in the next, 50 to 100 years, they'll probably not be might not be gone, but they definitely won't be popular because the world is only going to get queerer and browner and more female and more poorer and people are basically the higher ups and the marginalized are going to become more and more separated and um, so in like 50 to 100 years, these people who are like, hey, gay people suck, stay in that trailer and vote for me and stuff, like that's not going to work anymore. This is their last attempt to gain control in a petty kind of way. It's kind of like when you tell your toddler, like, go to your room. I told you to go to your room. And they're like, all right, fine, go to my room. And then you invite company over and they come out of their room and they like shit on the floor. And it's like, yeah, I guess you one-upped me, like, but I'm still gonna punish you later though. Like you're not in control completely and you're not in a power infinitely. Like, yeah, I guess you one-upped me in this one instance, but like you're gone, dude. Like you have no power here. So I'm hoping that the Democrats take control at some point and like man up, so to speak, and like, you know, do what they're supposed to do. Because if this was the other way around, the Republicans, when every time they get in control, they prove that they're authoritarian. So why aren't the Democrats that way? I mean, we could be authoritarian about, huh?
But I said their first fall government.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't understand why the Democrats won't be authoritarian about being good. That those are things that you should be authoritarian about, don't oppress people. Like but they're not willing to use their authority to tell people not to oppress others. They just I don't know. It's weird. In other countries, they tell their students when they're learning world history and American history. People in England, teachers and historians, they tell children. In America, they've got like this two-party system of like Democrats and Republicans. They're the same party, but Americans think they're different parties, is basically what they teach kids in other countries. And it's pretty true.
And that's the weird thing though, is that okay, the Republicans, let's be honest, they're absolutely batshit crazy, most of them.
Yeah.
And the logic that they have is not very logical at all. And I know
No.
that's not a very, it's a very bland way of putting it. I could have used much better words, but batshit crazy works perfectly for me.
Yeah, batshit crazy work.
And then you have the Democrats who are like, oh, we should compromise with these batshit crazy people.
Yeah.
Them halfway. How do you meet batshit crazy halfway?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't meet these people halfway because they're not even in reality. Like, to meet, it's like if I meet you halfway and you take a step back, then I'm only ever going to keep meeting you on your way. Like, you know what I mean? And that's not fair. Like, they don't want to be met halfway. They want you to meet them halfway and then they want to take a step back so you have to keep coming forward to them. That's what they want.
Right. And what's interesting is you have pundits on the right saying that the Democrats are moving further and further to the left. I'm like, no, dude, you're moving further and further to the right. Left wing.
Centrists and people who say like the whole I'm not political thing piss me off because it's like maybe that shit would have flown in like the 90s when things were like a little bit settled, but like not now. Like there's too much political hellscape going on right now that like when someone says like I'm not political, I'm like, no, you are. What you mean to say is I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to have a difficult discussion in which I might have to be corrected and learn something and not be a bigot anymore. So
Right, 100%. Let's see. We have a few minutes left, so where can people find you?
you can find me on my Instagram, Audra Milos 93. I'm not on Twitter or Facebook. You can pretty much find me on Instagram. But unfortunately, I'm not a very social person, so that's like the only places you can find me. I quit Twitter because I just didn't have anything to say, and unfortunately, Twitter is it's mostly a status and quotes and discussion based platform. Same with Facebook, and I don't have anything to really say that hasn't first of all already been said by my betters or and I just don't have anything interesting going on. Like I go to photo shoots and film sets for work, then I come home and sleep. I'm a very boring person. But you can follow me on Instagram if you want. You can find me on Instagram, and I do post about not only my modeling work, but I also post about politics like all the time too. So
Awesome. And your voice is just as important as your quote unquote betters.
Oh, thank you. It's just that it's what I mean by that is that, like for instance, I've got roommates who are very intelligent and they're also very articulate, which I am not. And I grew up in, Maine and Massachusetts, so naturally I'm very kind of rednecky, hick-ish, and I say things, like "fuck the higher ups," the people in charge are a bunch of assholes, and my roommates will say something a little bit more eloquent and articulate, like, we need to vote these people out and things like that. And it's just so when I say my betters, I mean people who are articulate, who belong in politics, who can bring us together, and not people like me who are just like, just fucking get along. And it's, that doesn't really solve anything. So, yeah.
Yeah. But I want to thank you so much for coming on my show and talking with me about this very important subject. And you know, I we I know that as a white male, I need to be out there and supporting women in this fight for sure. I need to be supporting um, POC people who are going to be incredibly affected by this, and also supporting people who are of the LGBTQ plus community because they're going to have a fight. I mean, they're already fighting right now, but
Yeah.
it's just going to get exponentially worse with the
I'm
right.
glad that you mentioned that. It is going to get worse. I'm glad you mentioned the queer community, because I've got a lot of non-binary friends and I've got a lot of trans male friends who have uteruses, and this is going to affect them as well. And they do feel a little bit left out because the language isn't being very inclusive. And there's a lot of cis women who don't have uteruses or genitals. There's a lot of cis women who can't get pregnant. There's a lot of trans men who can get pregnant. There's a lot of non-binary people who can get pregnant and do have uteruses, and they need to be included in this as well.
100%. All ABFAB lives matter.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much for having me anytime
No
you
problem.
want.
Awesome. It was lovely to have you on. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.